Welcome to Monk's Moon Temple. Let's begin. There's a moment that comes for almost everyone. It's late. You're alone. Or you're with someone, and the encounter is over. The room is quiet. And in that stillness, a very specific feeling arrives. It's not satisfaction. It's not joy. It's a kind of hollow echo. A sense of, is that it? You got what you wanted. You followed the pull. And now, in the aftermath, there's a vague sense of having been tricked. Not by anyone else. By something inside you. Most of us spend our lives chasing that pull without ever stopping to ask what it really is. We call it desire. We think we understand it. We think it's about sex, or food, or money, or love. But what if I told you that desire is rarely about the thing you think you want? What if desire is actually a decoy? A smoke screen deployed by a part of your mind that is terrified of being still, of being alone, of simply being present with what is. My name is Matt, and you're watching Monk's Moon Temple. Today, we are going to do something that is rarely done with this topic. We are going to stop asking the small question, is this allowed? And start asking the real one, what is this? We'll look at what the Buddha actually taught about craving. We'll explore why a monk in a forest and a parent in a city have two completely different answers to the same question. We'll travel to Japan, to Thailand, to Tibet, and see how one teaching produced 1,000 different expressions. And we will not, I repeat, we will not, turn this into a lecture about purity or permission. This is an investigation. And the only rule is honesty. Because the Buddha's wisdom isn't a set of handcuffs. It's a key. And the door it opens is the one to your own mind. Let's start with a story. A story about a baker. There was once a baker, known in her village for the most incredible bread. People would line up before dawn. Her sourdough had a crust that shattered like glass and a crumb so tender it felt like a secret. She loved her work. The feel of the flour, the patience of the fermentation, the moment she pulled a perfect loaf from the oven. It was an act of creation. Then, a developer came to town. He offered her a deal. She could sell her bread in every grocery store in the region. She would be rich. She took the deal. Soon, she wasn't a baker anymore. She was a manager. She oversaw production lines. The bread was now made by machines, from a mix. It was consistent, bland, and profitable. One day, she was walking through the factory. She picked up a loaf from the conveyor belt, still warm from the industrial oven. She broke it open. There was no soul in it. It was a product. And in that moment, she realized she hadn't lost her love of bread. She had lost the baker. What happened to the baker is what happens to most of us with desire. The original impulse, the love of bread, the capacity for intimacy, the appreciation of beauty, is pure. It's alive. It's part of being human. But somewhere along the way, the developer shows up. The developer is the mind that says, more. Faster. This feeling is good, so I must own it. I must secure it. I must have it on a production line. And in that grasping, the baker disappears. You are left with the hollow product, wondering why it doesn't taste the way it used to. If this idea resonates with you, if you've ever felt that shift from appreciation to addiction, from enjoyment to grasping, then you are in the right place. This channel is about understanding the mind, not taming it. And to do that, we need to look together. If you want to continue this journey of seeing clearly, consider subscribing. It helps us build a community of people more interested in awareness than in answers. Now, let's go deeper. Because that story isn't just about bread. It's a map of the human condition. And the Buddha was the ultimate cartographer. If you go to a doctor with a fever, the doctor doesn't just tell you to stop having a fever. They look for the infection. They look for the cause. The Buddha approached the human experience the same way. He saw a universal fever. He called it dukkha. A word often translated as suffering, but it's more nuanced. It's the pervasive dissatisfaction, the subtle background hum of unease, the feeling that things are never quite enough. You get the promotion, and the unease is still there. You find the partner, and the doubt creeps in. You buy the house, and you start worrying about the mortgage. In his very first sermon, recorded in a text we know as the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the setting in motion of the wheel of truth, he gave his diagnosis. The cause of this fever, he said, is Tanha. Craving. Thirst. Now, this is where most people get it wrong. They hear craving and they think it means desire. They think the Buddha said, don't desire anything. That's not it. That's a misinterpretation that leads to a kind of inner civil war, where you're fighting your own nature. The Buddha was far more precise. He was a scientist of the mind. Tanha isn't the initial spark of pleasure you get from a beautiful sunset or a delicious meal or an intimate moment. That spark is just the mind's natural response to stimuli. It's not a problem. The problem is the reaching. It's the moment the mind says, I need this to continue. I need more of this. This is what will make me whole. Think of it like this. Imagine you are walking along a riverbank. You see a beautiful, smooth, cool stone in the water. You reach down and pick it up. You admire it. It feels good in your hand. That's perception. That's sensation. That's not the problem. The problem is when you decide you must own the stone. You close your fist around it. You put it in your pocket. You go home and you put it on a shelf. But now you're worried someone might steal it. You check on it. You polish it. You define yourself as the person who owns that beautiful stone. The stone, which was once a source of simple pleasure, has become a source of anxiety, possession, and identity. Your hand is no longer open to receive the next beautiful thing the river brings. Your hand is clenched around the last one. That clenching, that's Tanha. That's the craving. And the Buddha identified three main types of this thirst. First, there is the thirst for sense pleasures, kama Tanha. This is the most obvious one. The pull towards pleasant sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touches. It's the craving for the next bite of chocolate, the next catchy song, the next sexual encounter. It's not evil. It's just exhausting. It's like being a hummingbird, forever flitting from one flower to the next, never resting, never full, because the nature of the flower is that the nectar runs out. Second, there is the thirst for becoming, bhava-tanha. This is more subtle. This is the craving for a particular identity, a particular existence. It's the drive to become someone. The successful entrepreneur. The desirable lover. The enlightened spiritual person. It's the mind's project of building a self it can be proud of, a self that will last. We pour energy into this project, and we become terrified of anything that threatens it: criticism, failure, aging. And third, there is the thirst for non-becoming, vibhava tanha. This is the flip side. It's the craving for annihilation, for escape. It's the desire to get rid of unpleasant feelings, to numb out, to disappear. It's the voice that says, I don't want to feel this anxiety, this boredom, this loneliness. So we reach for the drink, the screen, the distraction. We try to kill the unwanted part of our experience. But you can't kill a part of yourself. You can only anesthetize it. And it always wakes up. See the brilliance of this diagnosis? The Buddha isn't pointing a finger at your actions. He's pointing a flashlight at your mind. He's asking, are you the hand opened by the river, or are you the hand clenched in the pocket? The confusion about sex and Buddhism comes from mistaking the finger for the moon. People point at the rule, the precept, the prohibition, and they think that's the teaching. But the teaching is the moon. It's the nature of that clenched hand. The rules are just fingers pointing at it. So, if the problem is the clenched hand, the craving, the grasping, why do some Buddhists remove sex from their lives entirely, while others are having dinner with their families and living ordinary lives? This is where we have to understand that Buddhism is not a one-size-fits-all religion. It's more like a medical system. It prescribes different treatments for different conditions, depending on how sick the patient is and what they're trying to achieve. Think of it like this. You have two people. One is a heart surgeon. The other is a gardener. The heart surgeon has a task of incredible precision and intensity. For hours at a time, she must be completely focused on a single, microscopic field. A single tremor, a single distraction, could be catastrophic. For her, simplicity is not a luxury, it's a requirement. She needs to remove every possible variable from her life so that when she's in the operating theater, her entire being is focused on the work. The gardener has a different task. His work is with the messiness of life, soil, weather, pests, growth, decay. He is not trying to control a single field, he is participating in an entire ecosystem. For him, engagement with the world is the practice. He learns by watching the seasons change, by seeing what thrives and what dies. His wisdom comes from being in the middle of it all. The Buddhist monk is the heart surgeon. The layperson is the gardener. Both are practicing. Both are learning. But the conditions of their practice are completely different. For a monk, who has taken on the project of uprooting the deepest layers of craving in this very lifetime, celibacy is a necessary condition. It's not a punishment. It's not a statement that sex is bad. It's an acknowledgement that sexual energy is the most powerful, distracting force in the human experience. It's like rocket fuel. If you're trying to build a delicate clock, you don't work next to a rocket engine. The monastic code, the Vinaya, is incredibly detailed. It contains 227 rules for monks. And the very first category, the most serious rules called the parajika, defeats, state that if a monk has sexual intercourse, his ordination is immediately over. It's like a surgeon who decides to take up skydiving on their lunch break. It doesn't mean skydiving is evil. It means it's incompatible with the level of focus required for the job. A monk's life is designed to turn down the volume of the world so they can hear the quietest whispers of their own mind. They meditate for 6, 8, 10 hours a day. They sleep on hard beds. They eat one meal a day. They own nothing. In that level of sensory deprivation, the mind becomes incredibly sensitive. If they were to engage in sex, it wouldn't just be a break, it would be like an atomic bomb going off in their meditation hall. The purpose of their training is to see the nature of reality directly, to see through the illusion of self. And as we all know, there is no experience that reinforces the illusion of a solid, desiring self quite like sex. The monk's path is to remove that reinforcement entirely, to see what's left when the most powerful drives are still. But for the vast majority of Buddhists throughout history, the farmers, the merchants, the parents, the kings, that path wasn't their path. They were gardeners. They followed a different code, the 5 precepts, Pankasila. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking life. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking what is not given. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. I undertake the precept to refrain from false speech. I undertake the precept to refrain from intoxicants that cloud the mind. Look closely at the third one. It doesn't say, refrain from sex. It says, refrain from sexual misconduct. In Pali, the term is kamisu mikakara. So what is misconduct? This is where the precept becomes a mirror, not a rulebook. It's defined by context, by harm, by the state of mind. It's not about the act itself, it's about the relational field in which the act occurs. Generally, it's understood as sex that involves harm, rape, coercion, any form of physical or psychological force. This is a clear violation of the first precept, non-harming. As well, deception, cheating on a partner who trusts you, breaking a commitment, lying to get someone into bed, exploitation, using a position of power, teacher/student, boss/employee, therapist/client, to satisfy your own desires. Taking advantage of someone's vulnerability, whether it's due to age, emotional state, or circumstance. The precept isn't there to make you feel guilty about pleasure. It's there to protect against suffering. It's a harm filter. It's asking, in this intimate act, is there clarity? Is there consent? Is there mutual respect? Or is there manipulation, secrecy, and a grasping mind using another person as an object to satisfy its own thirst? The early Buddhist texts are full of examples of lay people who were deeply awakened. Anathapindika, the great benefactor of the Buddha, was a wealthy householder. He was married. He had children. He was not a monk. Visakha, a lay woman, had 20 children and was one of the Buddha's most accomplished disciples. They reached high stages of awakening not by removing themselves from the world, but by learning to see clearly within it. They learned to be gardeners, tending to the messy garden of their lives with awareness, not fighting the weeds, but understanding their nature. So when someone tells you that real Buddhists don't have sex, they are confusing the surgeon's scalpel with the gardener's trowel. They are different tools for different jobs. Now, let's complicate this picture even more. Because for 2,500 years, Buddhism hasn't just been one thing. It's been a river flowing through dozens of cultures. And the water takes on the flavor of the land it passes through. Imagine a single teaching: sexual misconduct causes suffering. Traveling from the plains of India in the 5th century BCE. It arrives in the forests of Sri Lanka. It crosses the Himalayas into Tibet. It sails across the sea to China, then to Japan. It lands in the mountains of Korea and the rice paddies of Vietnam. In each place, it meets a different landscape, a different climate, a different set of customs. And in each place, it grows into a different tree. Let's take two examples, Thailand and Japan. In Thailand, you have the forest tradition. This is the tradition of monks like Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Mun. These are the heart surgeons. Their monasteries are deep in the woods. The practice is intense renunciation. Monks maintain strict boundaries, especially with women. They don't touch. They don't sit alone with them. Their entire life is structured to minimize contact with the very thing that could derail their practice. For them, celibacy is non-negotiable. It's the foundation upon which their entire contemplative life is built. It is a path of radical simplicity. Now, fly from a forest monastery in northeast Thailand to a temple in downtown Tokyo. It's a family temple. The priest, let's call him Tanaka-san, is married. He has 2 children. This morning, he performed a ritual for a parishioner's ancestor. He came home, ate breakfast with his wife and kids, and helped his son with his math homework. In the afternoon, he will host a funeral. In the evening, he might have a beer with friends. Is this real Buddhism? In Japan, for many traditions, absolutely yes. This wasn't always the case. For centuries, Japanese monks were, in theory, celibate. But in 1872, during the Meiji Restoration, the government issued a decree that Buddhist priests could marry. This was partly a political move to weaken the power of the celibate monastic institutions. But for some schools of Buddhism, it was simply catching up with reality. In Pure Land Buddhism, one of the largest schools in Japan, the founder Shinran had already rejected monastic celibacy centuries earlier. He argued that the lay life was his path. He married and had children. His logic was that if salvation comes through faith in Amida Buddha, not through one's own efforts, then the rigorous asceticism of the monk is unnecessary. You practice in the midst of life. So today, you have a Japanese priest whose daily life looks nothing like a Thai monk's. The Thai monk would see the Japanese priest's life as a distraction from the core task of meditation. The Japanese priest might see the Thai monk's life as a beautiful but less accessible path for the average person. Both are Buddhists. Both are following a tradition that traces its lineage back to the Buddha. But their expressions of that tradition are worlds apart. Then we have Tibet. The situation there is like a beautiful, complex tapestry. The Gelug school, the tradition of the Dalai Lama, is fiercely monastic. Celibacy is strictly observed. Their monasteries are vast institutions of learning and discipline. They are the academic surgeons. The Nyingma school, the oldest tradition, has a strong presence of Ngakpas. These are tantric practitioners who are not monks. They are married. They have families. They often wear white robes and long hair, distinguishing them from the shaven-headed monks. They practice in the world, using householder life as their context for transformation. The Kagyu and Sakya schools have a mix. You have celibate monks and you have married, hereditary lineage holders. Both are revered. Both are considered authentic. One teaching. One Buddha. Thousands of expressions. This is so important to understand because when you hear someone say, Buddhism says X, you have to ask them, which Buddhism? Which century? Which culture? Because the answer will be different. The core question, is there craving? Is there harm? Remains the same. But how that question is lived, how it's embodied, is as varied as humanity itself. And then there's Tantra. This is the place where the conversation about Buddhism and sex gets the most distorted. In the West, Tantra has become a brand. It's sold as a path to better orgasms, sacred sexuality, couples retreats with essential oils and soft lighting. It's often just foreplay with a Sanskrit vocabulary. And that's fine if that's what people are looking for. But let's be clear, that's not what Tantra is in its original context. It's like using a Formula One race car to drive to the grocery store. You can do it, but you're missing the point of the machine entirely. In Tibetan Buddhism, Tantra, or Vajrayana, is a highly advanced, incredibly powerful, and frankly, dangerous form of practice. It's not for beginners. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for people who want to feel good. It's for people who are ready to have their entire sense of self dismantled. The core insight of Tantra is this: if you are trying to get rid of your defilements, your desire, your anger, your ignorance, you are still operating in a dualistic mind. You're saying, this is bad, this is good. I want this, I don't want that. Tantra takes a radically different approach. It says, use the defilements themselves as the path. Transform the poison into medicine. Sexual desire is considered the most powerful poison. It is the strongest, most compelling, most self-absorbed energy we have. It completely hijacks the mind. In a state of intense desire, the entire universe shrinks down to one thing, the object of your craving. The sense of a separate self, the me, who wants, feels absolutely solid, absolutely real. The tantric practitioner, after years and years of preparation, might engage in a practice that uses this energy not to reinforce the self, but to destroy it. The famous image you've seen, the yab-yum, a male and female deity in sexual union, is a symbol. It's not pornography. The male figure represents compassion, karuna, the active, skillful means to help beings. The female figure represents wisdom, prajna. The direct realization of emptiness, the understanding that all things are empty of a fixed, independent self. Their union symbolizes the inseparable nature of these two qualities. Enlightenment is not just being wise or just being compassionate, it's the union of the two. In some advanced practices, a realized practitioner might use the experience of sexual union as a meditation on non-duality. In the height of the experience, the boundary between self and other, subject and object, can momentarily dissolve. Where does me end and you begin? The tantric practitioner uses this dissolution as a direct glimpse into emptiness, into the true nature of reality, which is also a non-dual field. But, and this is a massive, crucial, non-negotiable, but, you cannot just jump into this. The preparation is immense. We're talking about years, often a decade or more, of foundational practices called ngondro. This involves 100,000 prostrations, a physical practice of humility, 100,000 mandala offerings, a practice of cultivating generosity and visualizing the entire universe as a pure land, 100,000 Vajrasattva mantras, a purification practice, and 100,000 guru yoga practices, cultivating devotion. This is just the warm-up. Then, you need a deep, philosophical understanding of emptiness, sunyata. You need to have studied for years. You need to have contemplated the nature of reality until it's not just an idea, but a living question in your heart. And most importantly, you need the authorization of a qualified guru. You need a teacher who has walked this path and can guide you, because these practices can seriously destabilize the mind. They can unleash psychological forces that a person without a strong foundation cannot handle. It's like giving a child the controls of a nuclear reactor. The partner, if there is one, must be equally trained. It's a mutual practice, a mutual meditation. It's not one person using another for their own spiritual advancement. It is two realized beings coming together in a ritualized, sacred space, under strict conditions, with a specific motivation, not for pleasure, but for awakening. The vast majority of Tibetan Buddhist practitioners never touch these practices. They are advanced, rare, and authorized. They are the deep end of the pool. Most of us are still learning to float in the shallow end, and that's exactly where we should be. To claim you are doing tantric practice because you bought a book on sacred sexuality is, to an actual Vajrayana practitioner, like claiming you are a neurosurgeon because you own a butter knife. The intention is different. The training is different. The entire context is different. You're not using desire to dismantle the self, you're using it to build a more elaborate fantasy of the self. And that, the Buddha would say, is just another form of suffering. Let's bring this back down to earth. Most of us aren't monks in a forest. Most of us aren't tantric adepts. Most of us are just people, trying to figure out how to be human in a world that constantly tells us to want more. We're dealing with guilt, with confusion, with loneliness, with the quiet shame of things we don't talk about. People ask, what does Buddhism say about same-sex relationships? And the honest answer is that the early texts, the Pali Canon, do not address this question in the way we ask it today. It's anachronistic. They weren't having the same cultural conversation. What they do address, again and again, is the framework: harm, deception, exploitation, craving. The precept on sexual misconduct doesn't list genders. It describes actions. Is there consent? Is there fidelity? Is there manipulation? The lens is the same, regardless of who is involved. Throughout Buddhist history, cultures have absorbed and reflected the local attitudes towards gender and sexuality. Thailand has a long history of visible gender diversity with the Kat Hoi community. It's part of the social fabric. Buddhism in Thailand has largely learned to coexist with this reality. Japan had historical traditions of same-sex relationships, including within some monastic contexts. Other Buddhist cultures became more conservative, often influenced by Victorian-era colonial laws that were absorbed into their own legal and social codes. Scholar Bernard Faure points out that sexual ethics in Buddhism are incredibly varied. What is forbidden in one tradition is accepted in another. The point is that Buddhism doesn't offer a modern political stance on identity. But it does offer a timeless psychological tool, the lens of harm. The questions remain: is there craving? Is there grasping? Is there harm? Those questions don't change based on who you love. They are universal. People ask, can I be a good Buddhist and have a sex life? And the answer is, can you have a sex life without craving consuming you? Can you be intimate without needing to possess the other person? Can you experience pleasure without building your identity around it? Can you handle the end of a relationship without collapsing into a pit of despair and self-loathing? That's the practice. It's not about the act. It's about your relationship to the act. Let me tell you another story. There was a brilliant programmer. He could look at 1,000 lines of code and find the one bug that was crashing the system. He was a master of logic. He applied this same logic to his life. He had a successful career, a nice apartment, and a series of relationships that followed a predictable pattern. He would meet someone. There would be excitement. Then, inevitably, a small flaw would appear. She laughed too loud. She was messy. She didn't understand his work. And the programmer would begin to fix her. He would point out the flaw. He would suggest how she could improve. He was debugging his partner. And, just as inevitably, the relationship would crash. He was left alone, wondering why no one was compatible with him. One day, after another breakup, he sat down to meditate. He wasn't a Buddhist, he was just desperate. He watched his mind. He saw the thoughts about her. He saw the anger. And then he saw something deeper. He saw the part of himself that felt incomplete. The part that believed he needed a partner to be whole. He realized he wasn't looking for a person, he was looking for a patch for a hole in his own code. He was using relationships to fix a bug in himself that only he could fix. The women he dated weren't the problem. His craving for completion was the problem. This is the investigation the Buddha asks for. It's not about whether the programmer should date or be celibate. It's about seeing the pattern of grasping. It's about asking, what am I really looking for? When you ask that question with radical honesty, the world changes. You stop debugging others and start understanding yourself. The Buddha's teaching method wasn't gentle in the way we think of gentle. He wasn't trying to make people feel good. He was trying to wake them up. He used shock, he used confrontation, he used images of death and decay to shatter the comfortable illusions we build. Here are 3 original stories that illustrate this method of seeing clearly. Imagine a man who lives alone on a mountain. He is content. He watches the sunrise. He listens to the wind in the pines. He is at peace. Then, one day, he finds an old radio in a cave. He brings it home, fixes it, and turns it on. Suddenly, his quiet world is filled with voices. Music. News. Advertisements. The radio tells him he needs a new truck. It tells him his life is boring. It tells him there are parties happening in the city, beautiful people laughing without him. At first, it's fascinating. Then, it becomes a torment. He can't stop listening. He starts to feel inadequate, lonely, restless. The peace of the mountain is gone. He has 2 choices. He can try to fight the radio. He can get angry at it, smash it, throw it off the mountain. That's one approach. It's the approach of suppression. But the radio is still out there. He might even go and dig it out of the trash later. Or, he can simply understand what the radio is. It's just sound waves. It's just a collection of voices and noise. It has no power to define him, to make him feel inadequate, unless he believes it. He can listen to it without being controlled by it. He can hear the advertisement for the truck and think, "Ah, there's the greed voice." He can hear the party music and think, "Ah, there's the envy voice." And he can let it pass, like a cloud moving across the sky. The man on the mountain is you. The radio is your mind full of desires. You don't have to smash it, suppress, and you don't have to dance to every song, indulge. You just have to see it for what it is. A collection of impersonal, conditioned thoughts and feelings. They arise. They pass. They are not who you are. A sculptor had a vision. She saw in her mind a perfect statue. It was beautiful, graceful, full of life. She found a perfect block of marble and began to work. But no matter how carefully she chiseled, the statue and the stone never matched the one in her head. She would get close, then see a flaw, and try to fix it. In fixing one flaw, she would create another. She grew frustrated, then angry. She began to attack the marble, chiseling furiously, trying to force it to be what she wanted. Finally, in a rage, she took a hammer and shattered the block into 100 pieces. She sat among the rubble, weeping. The sculptor is the mind of craving. The perfect statue is the fantasy we project onto reality. The marble is the actual, living, breathing person or experience in front of us. We see the marble, our partner, our life, our own body. And we immediately start chiseling. We try to make it conform to our fantasy. We want it to be more beautiful, more exciting, more permanent. When it inevitably fails to meet our expectations, we get frustrated. We try harder. We attack it with our criticism, our disappointment, our grasping. And eventually, we shatter it. We destroy the very thing we claim to love because it refused to be our fantasy. The practice is to put down the chisel. To look at the marble and see it for what it is, not for what you want it to be. To see its veins, its cracks, its unique form, and to say, this is what is here. This is enough. That is the end of suffering. A photographer traveled to a famous spot to photograph a sunset. He arrived hours early to get the perfect position. He set up his tripod, his filters, his expensive camera. As the sun began to sink, the sky exploded in color, oranges, pinks, deep purples. It was breathtaking. But the photographer wasn't looking at the sunset. He was looking at his camera's LCD screen. He was checking his settings. He took a shot, frowned, adjusted a dial, took another. The entire sunset passed, and he experienced it only as a series of technical problems to be solved. He captured a technically perfect image. But he never saw the sunset. We do this with our lives. We are so busy trying to capture the perfect experience, to own it, to post it, to store it in our memory banks, that we miss the experience itself. We are not present for our own lives. The craving to possess the moment robs us of the moment. The question is not, is this sunset allowed? The question is, are you seeing it? After all of this, the stories, the traditions, the analysis, you might be thinking, okay, Matt, that's interesting. But what do I actually do with this? I'm not a monk. I'm not going to Tibet. I just want to be a little less stressed about my life and my relationships. The answer is both simple and incredibly inconvenient. It's simple because it's just one instruction. And it's inconvenient because it requires you to do the one thing you've probably spent your whole life trying to avoid. You have to be present with what you feel. The practice is this: the next time desire arises, and it will, probably today, don't follow it, and don't fight it. Just feel it. Let's say it's a craving for sex. Maybe you're scrolling through an app, or you're with someone, or you're just alone and the thought appears. Instead of immediately acting on it, or instead of shaming yourself for having it, just stop for a moment. Bring your full attention to the physical sensation of the craving itself. Where do you feel it in your body? Is it a tightness in your chest? A warmth in your belly? A restlessness in your legs? A clenching in your jaw? Just notice the raw physical data. What is the quality of the thoughts attached to it? Is there a story? I need this to feel loved. If I don't have this, I'm a failure. This person will make me whole. Just watch the thoughts like clouds passing. How does it feel to just be with this energy, without doing anything about it? Does it intensify? Does it shift? Does it eventually, after a minute or two, start to lose its power? Does it pass? This is the laboratory. This is the practice. You are no longer a slave to the impulse, and you are no longer at war with it. You are simply a witness. And in that witnessing, something shifts. You realize that you are not the craving. You are the one watching the craving. The craving is a guest in the house of your being. It is not the owner. A man once came to a famous meditation teacher. He was tormented by lust. He said, "Master, how do I get rid of these thoughts?" The teacher looked at him and said, "Don't get rid of them. Get to know them. Invite them in for tea. Ask them where they come from. They will either become your friends, or they will get bored and leave. But if you keep trying to throw them out the door, they will just keep climbing back in through the window." This is the radical hospitality of awareness. It doesn't reject anything. It just illuminates everything. So, let's go back to the beginning. To the late night. To the hollow feeling after the thing you wanted was finally yours. The reason that hollow feeling appears is not because you did something wrong. It's because you were sold a map that didn't match the territory. The world tells you that getting what you want will make you happy. It tells you that desire is a compass pointing toward fulfillment. But the Buddha looked at that compass and said, "Look closer. That compass isn't pointing north. It's pointing at its own needle. It's a self-perpetuating loop. Desire isn't a path to happiness. Desire is a path to more desire. It's a fire that feeds on itself. You feed it, it grows. You starve it of your attention, it begins to die down. This doesn't mean you can't enjoy things. It means you can enjoy them without being caught by them. It's the difference between being able to appreciate a beautiful garden and needing to own it. It's the difference between loving someone and needing them to complete you. The freedom the Buddha pointed to isn't the freedom to do whatever you want. That's just another cage, because your wants are conditioned by forces you don't understand. True freedom is the freedom from needing anything to be different than it is in order to be happy. It's the freedom of the hand that can be opened by the river, receiving whatever the water brings, a cool stone, a leaf, a drop of water, and letting it go just as easily, ready for whatever comes next. This is the practice of a lifetime. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a way of seeing to be cultivated. You don't get to a point where desire never arises. That's another fantasy. Desire will arise. It's part of having a human body and a human mind. But you can get to a point where you are no longer fooled by it. You can see it coming. You can watch it do its dance. And you can smile, not because you're above it, but because you finally understand the punchline. The joke is that you were searching everywhere for something to make you feel complete, when all along, the thing doing the searching was the very thing that felt incomplete. You were a wave, desperately looking for the ocean, not realizing you were made of water the entire time. This is what the Buddha's teaching on desire offers. Not permission. Not prohibition. But a mirror. And the reflection in that mirror is not a set of rules to follow, but a mind that can finally, after all this time, begin to see itself clearly. There was once a king who had everything. Palaces, jewels, an army, beautiful consorts. Yet he was deeply unhappy. He heard of a sage who lived simply in the forest, who radiated a peace the king had never known. The king went to find him. He found the sage sitting under a tree, with nothing but a simple robe and a clay bowl for alms. The king was confused. He said, "I have everything, and I am miserable. You have nothing. How can you be at peace?" The sage smiled and said, "Your Majesty, you are carrying your palace on your back. I have set mine down." He picked up his clay bowl. "See this bowl? When I receive food in it, I am grateful. When it is empty, I am grateful for the emptiness, for it makes me ready to receive again. I do not cling to the food, and I do not cling to the bowl. It is just a bowl." Your mind is like a king who thinks he must fill every room of his palace with treasure. But the palace has no roof. The rooms keep filling with rain, and you keep trying to bail it out. I have learned to live without a roof. The rain comes and goes. I do not try to keep it. The king didn't understand. He went back to his palace and tried to give away his possessions, but he was still miserable. He was still trying to do something. The sage's peace wasn't in having nothing. It was in needing nothing. His bowl was a symbol of an open hand, not an empty one. Our minds are like that king. We think we need to fill them with pleasant experiences to be happy. But we're trying to fill a leaky bucket. The practice is not to find a better bucket. It's to realize you are not the bucket. You are the water. A woman loved music. She had a state-of-the-art sound system. She would listen to symphonies and lose herself in the beauty. One day, a tiny bit of static began to creep into the speakers. At first, it was barely noticeable. But as she listened, she became fixated on it. She couldn't hear the music anymore, all she could hear was the static. She spent a fortune on new cables, new speakers, new amplifiers. She hired technicians. But the static remained. It got worse. Finally, in despair, she turned the system off. In the silence, she heard it. The static wasn't coming from the system. It was coming from a faulty wire in the wall of her apartment, a wire that was always there, humming. The system had just been amplifying it. The static is your craving. The faulty wire is the underlying sense of lack, of incompleteness, that is always humming in the background. You turn on the system of your life, you pursue a relationship, a career, a vacation, and you hope the music will drown out the hum. But the system just amplifies it. You try to fix the system, upgrade the parts, but the hum remains. The only solution is to turn the system off. To sit in the silence. To find the faulty wire. To see the lack directly, without trying to cover it up with the music of experience. When you can sit with the sense of lack, the loneliness, the boredom, without reaching for the remote, something miraculous happens. You realize the hum was never a problem. It was just a sound. And in that realization, the static doesn't bother you anymore. You can hear the music again, not as a cure, but as just another sound in the vast, silent symphony of your being. A gardener had 2 plots of land. In the first plot, he planted roses. He lavished them with attention, water, and fertilizer. He would spend hours each day admiring them. But inevitably, weeds would appear. He would see a weed and become furious. He would yank it out violently, often damaging the roots of the roses. But more weeds would come. He spent his whole life in a state of war with the weeds. In the second plot, he did something different. He prepared the soil. He planted roses. And then he simply observed. When a weed appeared, he would look at it. He would notice its leaf shape, its growth pattern, how it interacted with the roses. He didn't call it a weed. He just called it another plant. Over time, he noticed that some of these weeds actually helped the soil. Some provided shade for the rose roots. Some attracted beneficial insects. He stopped seeing them as enemies and started seeing them as part of the ecosystem. The second plot was not without challenges, but it was at peace. The gardener was no longer at war with his own garden. The first gardener is the mind of suppression. It sees desire as a weed to be eradicated. The second gardener is the mind of awareness. It sees desire as a natural phenomenon to be understood. It doesn't mean you let the weeds take over. It means you stop fighting them with hatred. You work with the whole garden, with wisdom and compassion. The rose of your peace can coexist with the weed of your desire, once you stop defining one as good and the other as evil. The key is not to pull the weeds. The key is to understand the soil from which they grow. A man looked into a mirror and saw a face that was sad, lonely, and unworthy. He hated the reflection. He tried to smash the mirror, but the reflection just shattered into 1,000 pieces, each one still showing him the same sad face. He tried to paint over the mirror, but the paint just covered the glass, and he couldn't see anything at all. He tried to turn the mirror away, but he knew the reflection was still there, waiting. Finally, he sat down in front of the mirror. He stopped trying to change the reflection. He just looked at it. He looked into the eyes of the sad face. And as he looked, without judgment, without trying to fix it, something shifted. He saw that the sadness in the reflection was not the reflection's fault. It was a reflection of his own mind. The reflection was just showing him what was there. The problem wasn't the mirror. The problem was the face he was making. He smiled at the reflection. And the reflection smiled back. The face in the mirror wasn't sad anymore. It had never been sad. It had just been reflecting. This is the practice of awareness. You stop trying to change the reflections in the mirror of your mind. You stop fighting the desires, the fears, the anxieties. You just look at them. And in that looking, you realize you are not them. You are the mirror. Clean, clear, and capable of reflecting anything without being stained by it. The desire comes. The desire goes. The mirror remains. So, what does Buddhism say about desire? It says, look. It doesn't say, do this, don't do that. It says, see this. See the nature of the grasping mind. See the suffering it creates. See the peace that is possible when the grasping stops, even for a moment. This isn't a philosophy for monks in caves. This is a practical, psychological tool for anyone who has ever felt the hollow echo after getting what they wanted. For anyone who has ever used a person, a substance, or an experience to avoid feeling lonely, inadequate, or afraid. For anyone who suspects that there might be more to life than this endless cycle of reaching and regretting. The path isn't about becoming pure. It's about becoming aware. It's not about renouncing the world. It's about renouncing the illusion that the world can ever fill you up. The only thing that can fill you up is the realization that you were never empty to begin with. You are the ocean, not the wave. You are the sky, not the cloud. You are the mirror, not the reflection. The questions the Buddha leaves you with are simple. They are the same questions whether you are alone or with someone, whether you are 20 or 80, whether you are a monk or a parent. Can you experience pleasure without being possessed by it? Can you be intimate with another person without needing to own them? Can you be honest about what you feel, even when it's uncomfortable? Can you let go when it's time to let go, without collapsing? These are not questions to answer once and for all. They are questions to live with. They are the koans of an ordinary life. And if you sit with them, if you really let them work on you, they will change everything. Not because you will find the perfect answer, but because the questions themselves will dissolve the one who is asking. And what's left is not a person who has figured out desire. What's left is just awareness. Open, awake, and free. Thank you for practicing with me today at Monk's Moon Temple. If this reflection was helpful, if it pointed you back towards your own experience, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you want to continue this journey of seeing clearly, not just believing, subscribe. We have more investigations to do together. Until next time.